Hey guys, welcome back to From the Devs. Chow Builder here. It's been a while and a minute. Um, yeah, it's been a long time since I uploaded any FTD content, and since it's coming up to my second year anniversary of playing the game, I thought I'll upload some videos showcasing some of my creations. I think it's past due time. This will be the first part video of a couple, and this one will just showcase some of my more normal builds. I kind of struggle a lot about what kind of format these videos would take because there's a lot of different FTD content creators out there that do a couple of different formats, but since I'm not good at talking, I think I'll just try to keep it short and to the point and see how it goes. I'll also kind of do it in a very structured way where we look at the design philosophy and statistics for each ship, kind of look at the aesthetics and design decisions for each of the elements like armor and weaponry, and then we'll do a bit of combat testing and showcase. But instead of waiting for the full kind of like 10-15 minute combat, it'll just be quite a bit edited just to get the point across. So the first of the three ships here, this one is a um, support cruiser called the Monsoon Melody. It's the second build of this ship actually. It's a Mark II. The first time I built the ship, it was my second capital ship ever in FTD. It kind of worked okay, but it looked really ugly, and I thought I could do better. And this ship was built in the spring of 2022. This one here is called the Ocean's Requiem. It costs 1.6 million materials. It's about similar on par with a Megalodon. And I built it in the summer of 2022, I believe, during the time when all the rage was about people building their own super battleships and putting it into a tournament against Border Wise's Titan Swan and Gmodism's, which we call it Draconia. This ship does kind of beat them, although it has 40 repair bots, and I never bother to enter in the not 40, I think 20 repair bots. I never bother to enter into the tournaments. In my own testing, it can win against both of those ships, but it's kind of because I looked at all the available workshop designs at that point and kind of took the best learning from everyone's designs. I kind of finished it late too, so it's not quite a one-to-one comparison. And also just because at 80,000 volume is much more compact than some of the other ships people were fielding. So it's much smaller. Uh, yeah, as you can see, I prefer this kind of fairy tale aesthetic to all my ships, and kind of keeping to the fairy faction. I want to keep everything as compact as possible. The third ship I want to show today is called the Moonlight Reverie. Uh, Reverie meaning dream. And this ship I also built in the summer of 2022. This was right before the breadboard update in September of that year. So it does use kind of a excessive amount of ACBs rather than doing all the functions by breadboard as we would do nowadays. But everything is just so clockwork intermeshed together that it's kind of hard to update everything. So I didn't bother going back and changing everything again. This ship I built to fulfill a role in my fleet that was left after the previous Super Capital ship became slightly outdated after the Scarlet Dawn updated their ships recently, probably summer of last year as well. This one costs 1.8 million materials and has 1,000 firepower, and it is tested to be able to take down anything in the Niter campaign with some room to spare as well. All right, the first of the ship, as I mentioned earlier, is a Monsoon Melody Mark II. The design philosophy of this is a support cruiser of 500,000 materials with uh, almost 400 firepower. Actually, because it's loading disruptor rounds, the firepower rating is lower than it should be, but it should be around 400 to 500. Fires these, let's see, for 82 millimeter railguns, and what it fires is 10% disruptor and 90% AP heat, with lots of AP and a bare minimum amount of heat to tackle anything that is compact and has kind of critical components such as explosive magazines or yeah, just anything that once it gets inside doesn't like to see any damage. And this ship, the role in the fleet if it fails is basically it's designed to do anything that a cobalt type of dueling ship does not do. So it's designed to counter spacecraft, submarines, swarms of enemies, and it can kind of work well in wolf pack against larger enemies. As you can see, there are 4 guns mounted on each side, so it has 50% fire coverage on either side of the ship and 50% behind as well, and then 100% firepower coverage in front of the ship. And most of its lifting thrust are, as you can see, it's fairly balanced. It's not weighted forward to the front of the ship. So if stuff gets knocked out in front of the ship, it doesn't immediately tilt over and flop into the water. The thrust is fairly distributed and is actually mounted in these pods that can rotate entirely. And it's not cheating because these pods are actually have venting as well, even though they're not necessary. But I made the aesthetic gap for the jets to come out of the ship. That allows the ship to have a very high degree of inclination and declination to be able to shoot at submarines and spacecraft. Okay, without further ado, let's jump into testing. So you can see the rapid fire guns are quickly taking out these twin guard craft. Um, there's a ton of missile defenses on the side, and the guns themselves will target large missiles as well. The thrusters are pulled back quite a bit, so it has a pretty high retreat speed to be able to keep the enemies to the front. Also has a decent bit of laser that can serve as both AA and point defense in terms of munition defense. So these heat rounds are AP heat rounds. They're just shredding these thinly armed targets like these, just going through and knocking out their critical components. All right, this is a Scarlodon Astrius. It's a spacecraft. I haven't really seen it fight, but it's in a similar cost range, so let's see how well it performs. So you can see the ship can achieve a very high degree of inclination and just fire straight above. It's good missile defenses. Um, okay, probably the Astrius is a bit faster than the typical targets that we like to engage. It doesn't really need to tilt up to be able to shoot, but well, we do like our kind of heavy armor to be pointed at the target. You can see we only have a bit of wedge armor, heavy wedge armor in the front, and all the pods are kind of protected by a little bit of heavy armor as well. There we kill this AI. These spacecraft, they're not very well armored for um, kind of for what they need to do, at least in the game designs right now, as they are. Right, after that, let's have a look at Wolin, which is, from my experience in the campaign, one of the most annoying enemies to face in the game. And then kind of develop this ship to counter it, although it's kind of expensive for what it does, but it does it very well. Kind of hard counters the submarine. So right now it has two modes of behavior. The second one is to maintain a short distance of only 700 meters. And when it does that, it's able to shoot straight down at the target, even without using super cavitation rounds. The rounds will not bounce. It will not bounce on the surface of the water. It can kind of shoot straight through and kind of eviscerate anything that's underwater and compact using those AP heat rounds. Uh, yeah, that's pretty quick. Again, these offensive weapons also serve as um, missile defense as well, but only against large missiles that can reliably hit. And since a lot of submarines tend to like using large missiles, um, it should be able to serve as a good defense on top of, as a supplement on top of all these missile interceptors around the ship. Because it's one of my older designs, kind of has, it's a bit plain looking, and I wasn't super inspired by the more recent Scarlet Dawn airship updates, just because those weren't out uh, and publicly available when I designed this ship. But one interesting feature I added was this canopy bridge under the ship, where you can have a underside view of the enemy, and then you can retract the bridge by doing this, and you can kind of turn on the video as well. Although, yeah, it's kind of not a very functional thing to have, kind of just for fun. Okay, this ship here is the Ocean's Requiem. Um, it's actually my second ever broadside ship and my second ever naval capital ship as well. So it was a huge learning experience. I think it works pretty well, but let's have a look. And I think it's one of my first times building turrets that's that's kind of a large gauge railgun as well. So lots of new things I learned building this. The warhead is 50% AP, 50% frag, 180-degree frag railgun with ejection fuse base bleeder, all that, which kind of learned it from looking at what's it, One Ice, one of One Ice battleships. His design is much simpler. It's more like a barge, but I don't want to have a barge type design, so I made everything as compact as possible. And here, 420 millimeters, almost 2,000 meter per second, pretty standard speed for railguns, 50 AP. The reason I'm new to building large gauge railguns is usually I prefer to have a smaller gauge that has rapid rate of fire because I really hate huge missiles, and a smaller gauge gun with a more rapid rate of fire are you are able to do a purpose, I mean, to shooting down huge missiles. But in this case, we just have offensive firepower, and then we have CWIS mounted on the side of these turrets, these huge hunking turrets. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out a good solution for mounting these CWIS. So the CWIS is spread out all through the ship. There's two dedicated turrets here, and then we have kind of a funny looking superstructure in the middle that we have a lot of decorations. Lotus Garden, uh, and then some more decorations in this space. You got the barracks for the Marines and officers, and then we have these interesting guns. That's obviously purely decorative, but yeah, it's kind of a fun space. I managed to sneak into these wings here, these pontoons. Just if you excuse me a minute, they're made entirely of alloy wedge armor, and we have the low spaces, and we have the heavy armor slopes. So yeah, that's kind of how the armor scheme for this ship works. And then the Sea Whiz, they're pure kinetic. So what they do is heavy head. They shoot at the enemy, and that kind of removes whip spam and it removes ERA, and then these frag shots are able to ideally go through and wreck the internals. It is able to beat the singularity at one point, probably have a 40 to 50% success chance, just because the singularity isn't in a good state now and doesn't dodge too much. Um, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with this ship. One interesting thing to note is this turret is almost a heavy armor vehicle by itself. It has heavy 4-meter heavy wedges in the front, heavy on the top, on the back behind the gun as well. And the heavy armor kind of goes around the turret neck and all the way down here, connects to the top of the turret. I didn't know at that time how bad these poles are to use pole armors. Kind of just made them um, full beams or slopes, to be honest, or even wedge fronts like these. But anyhow, and then they go around. There's heavy armor around the turret wall, and then heavy armor on the turret itself. There's even yeah, where's the front? Okay, so this is the front, and there's even beam slopes on the front of the turret when half layer thick, and then we have ejectors. Where are the ejectors? These are four clips too, so it was a lot of work getting this turret to work, but it works well. And then we have EMP protection. We have heavy armor connecting the top of the turret all the way down to the bottom. Even on the bottom of the turret, there's heavy armor. So basically, sometimes in testing, I've seen half the turret chewed up by a cram shot or something, and the turret can still function even with one of the guns missing like that. As long as the firing piece is connected, it will fire and the turret won't disintegrate. Yeah, very tanky ship. Let's see, almost 1,000 APS firepower and 50 laser, which for a ship of the size is the bare minimum kind of for laser defense and also kind of AA, and 37% armor cost. There's not too much uh, weird things that this ship does, so kind of just slog it out with the enemy. Um, I guess one interesting thing here is the layout for the modules. So you can see in the front, this portion, there's, yeah, um, I didn't learn to not do this when I built the ship. So this is kind of what we live with, but the chef has been AI deaded more times in testing than having its ammo blown up. So I guess there's no kind of targeting aim point, whereas AI there's kind of a aim point cluster there that gets it targeted more. You grab the guns, and then we have steam engine spread out very evenly all through the ship. And the steam engines are kind of oriented in a way where a shot goes in this way and comes out the other side. It will it's oriented such that it will knock out the minimum amount of steam engines possible. During all of testing, I've never seen the ship lose power or at least lose energy for the railguns. The batteries are spread out all over the ship too. You can see them in the turrets. There's batteries kind of just randomly lying about everywhere. And here we have these power banks, which and then yeah, I put GPP and all these. So the main AI are contained in the AI boxes, right? Obviously, but what I want to do is I want to make the AI box, the EMP insulated AI box, as small as possible. So I only just put the AI in there, and then all the extra GPP, they're kind of redundant, so they kind of just go wherever that's convenient. And we have the second AI, a bunch of ACBs. I learned a lot after building this ship too, so there's some funny stuff that you see here that I learned to not do in the future, but it's kind of late to change it. Um, can quickly take a walkthrough of the ship too. So here there's kind of the two-story garden in the center of the ship between these CWIS turrets. We have the main control room. Kind of probably didn't finish doing all the decoration work. Um, we go out. There's a barracks in the wings here, um, but the whole ship is fully walkable. And over here you have a rec area with a pool and a movie theater. Jump out of the pool. And all the way behind here is the captain's quarters. And the ship is called Ocean's Requiem. So here's the shrine to Tiamat. And we have the captain's very cozy cabin. Captain's office space. Uh, bathroom. Yeah. And I think there's an engineering area in the front too. If I can find it. Oh boy. Oh yeah. Here it is. The war room. Um, it's been so long since I worked on this. Been pretty good. I just wanted to make a naval ship that's kind of tanky from all sides and um, yeah, not as resource inefficient as an airship. Although, just with how long it takes for a water ship to travel everywhere with the water resistance, an airship isn't like strategically, airship isn't too much worse than this. All right, here's the combat test. We'll just test against a megalodon. Let's see if any of our guns got knocked out in the first salvo. So we do have broadside switching, and then I think when we get up to a certain speed, these cranes will retract. Yeah, these turrets are hunking ginormous. Let's see how our friend the Megalodon is faring. See, I can turn on damage debugging. So some people didn't realize at some point last summer, the Megalodon has been upgraded with wedge armor. So there's a lot of wedges in here that kind of stop it from immediately being killed by AP shots like this. And here we have broadside switching. So what that does is the circle is switched by ACB, and these circle maneuvers are they do prioritize angle. Oh shit. Well, there you go. That's the power of AP frag, just coming in and blowing up all these components. So that turret is pretty much dead. I think 700. See what turret is dead. Just going in and kind of chewing up all that stuff. I do believe those guns are kind of designed primarily to defeat Megalodon's armor profile. So again, something like the Singularity is not it's not as optimized, or just frontsiders in general. Right, so yeah, just going right into the middle of the ship and fragging out. So our own armor scheme isn't that great against what you call megalodons, hollow point shells, but yeah, we're still in the lead and we still have almost 1,000 firepower. And I believe it will do a broadside switch soon. So there is something on this ship that makes everyone target the middle where the AI is, and none of the other parts. Um, I'm still not quite sure why that is. Um, so yeah, that's potentially something I can improve. Because I do have all that redundancy, but if the enemy just shoots at the same spot, that's not really what the design is intended to kind of protect against. We have all those megalodons, little missiles coming in, but we do have sufficient missile defense between the lambs, all these counter missiles, and our dual purpose Seawas. Again, the ship prioritizes the angle of engagement, so instead of the range, so the megalodon is able to sail quite far away, and we're not really prioritizing the range. But because the megalodon isn't a fast ship, uh, we're still doing pretty good. So I actually ran a second test, um, and because the first test, the megalodon did something surprising. They actually almost capsized us. That's kind of, as you can see, even though Hollow Point has been nerfed, it's still very good against Alloy Wedge in this specific case, which is kind of what we're using. But in this round, we also got a surprise uh, nuke on the Megalodon's AI. So one of his AIs have been shot out, and significant chunk of important components is missing from his rear, which kind of shows how dangerous AP frag, uh, large gauge AP frag rounds are. And now the Megalodon is sinking, which it wouldn't used to do before, and that's just because of the use of wedge armor. So wedge armor, there's air gap in the armor, but in the game it's not counted as air. So basically, you don't get the buoyancy bonus of straight up just having gap, and because it doesn't have any up thrusters, it's just sinking. As you can see, even with very minimal entry wounds, where we have disabled quite a large number of his guns. And as for ourselves, we're getting a bit of maneuverability problem, just with how much of the side armor is missing, even though all the components are perfectly functional. So that's kind of the downside of using alloy wedges like this. And now we're attempting to do a broadside switch, but our hydrodynamics is kind of weird at this point. And now the Megalodon is getting 80% in sinking. Yeah, kind of a sad state to see this shipping, but that's what I don't like about water ships. Too much water resistance and very difficult to maneuver. Alright, that was quite a bit of recording, so now we're finally back to the third ship of this video. The Moonlight Reverie, my new flagship, at 1.8 million, which is designed to replace this one, the Battleship Yamato inspired ship, the Solar Renaissance, which is also 1.8 million. But as you can see here, wow, that's quite a bit of firepower. Most of that is in lasers, and very little armor because it's so narrow and heavily armored in the front. But yeah, it's pretty vulnerable to flanking, especially with um, how the campaign designs have been upgraded. And with scenario ship like this, it's actually pretty slow to turn. So if it doesn't fly backward fast enough, it can get flanked, which is a problem. It does use a single particle cannon to try and destroy its enemy. It's got lots of um, kind of shutters in the front to kind of block, and it can win against the singularity, but and all the other campaign designs, but it does have some vulnerabilities. So I kind of learned to um, uh, uh, learn that it's an issue. And of course, it's vulnerable to super piercing particle cannons, which is also more prevalent in the campaign since I built this ship. This is my third ever capital ship in FTD. So I learned a lot since this one. Yeah, by having a lot of firepower in lasers, that's not good because lasers are not good against smoke. The firepower rating is so high is because it has a lot of frequency doublers, so it can be pretty good against heavy armor and smoke, but not nearly as good as railguns, which I didn't quite know how to build when I built that ship, but now I do. So this ship, the new flagship, Moonlight Reverie, um, it has a lot of lasers, has a lot of uh, for 20 gauge railguns, and has a lot of um, 82 millimeter railguns, which are rapid firing. So it's a mix between a bit of everything. And then, of course, it has a particle cannon, which is much more scaled back, mounted way below the ship. So I have never seen it being taken out in combat, unless, of course, we get a very lucky flanking shot like that. And this gun also has a shutter, and it's a turret, so it can rotate um, as well. And then we got point defense scent blasters mounted top on the sides. We have spy mounted, uh, yeah, APS and heavy guns. These lasers, we have 200 firepower in laser. The lasers do multiple duties. They shoot down incoming small craft. They burn through the main target's armor, especially if they're using wood spam or ERA spam. Um, and then they can shoot at large missiles as well. So a lot of utility in these lasers, even though 200 firepower in laser is not very good as a pure offensive uh, kind of investment. It's pretty good at just fulfilling all the utilities that a ship needs. Okay, and then yeah, it's got 20 meters of uh, wedges in the front. And then what's interesting is I really like the layout of the ship, which makes it extremely resistant to piercing particle cannons, and that's kind of the whole design philosophy of this ship. So if you get a piercing particle cannon shot here, it will knock out this row of lift jets or yaw jets or this lift jet. Under there, we have more lift jets that oriented lengthwise, so it's very hard to knock out all of them. Um, and then we have these engines in the front, and we have turbines that are oriented forward, so it's very hard to knock out all of them with a piercing shot like that. And then we have lift jets here, we have lift jets here, not in the same alignment as this group. So I kind of made a Tetris with the set of steam engines that's 3 wide with these lift jets, and I flipped it around over here and the other way. And that kind of pattern is repeated throughout the ship with engines Tetrising with weapons, those weapons over here. Tetrising with these lift jets and um, steam generators with this laser, defense laser. components. Lasers are notoriously low volume efficient. But I didn't put them in a row, right? And I didn't put them all together. I kind of spaced the laser components out throughout the ship. Yeah, I didn't know at that time. When I made this fan is in reverse. That'll help a bit. It's more aesthetics though. Yeah, so one of the main downside of front sight airships is that they lack the redundancy of a broadsider. So I wanted to make a frontsider that has just as much redundancy in terms of resisting piercing shots as a broadsider. The only problem I kind of had was again the ammo magazine. I forgot where I put it, but I didn't have the chain reaction resistant ammo magazine. Wow, that was a lot of overlay. So bear with me. So here's the ammo magazine. So that's not great. I should have spaced out a bit more. Um, but hasn't really been an issue in all my times of using this craft. And then again, once again, we have warp drives for dodging huge missiles. Okay, if we look at the inside of the ship, it's a very kind of austere, no nonsense kind of command center. And we go back, there's some control consoles, and we have a teleporter, we have some more engineering space. And then we have the lobby. This is a war room, I believe. Yes. Um, it's a library, little library and everything. And we have a crew area with guns, kitchen, bathrooms. You don't need to. Oh, no, that's bathroom is behind. So, okay, resuming. Um, and then we kind of have a protected airlock area with the armory. I think there's an engineering space down below. Yes. Oops. Yeah. Crawl space, just like a real ship. Are those swords? Um, and then we have a airlock space going to the outside of the ship. And kind of quickly show you the captain's area as well. Kind of cozy little area. Pretty straightforward stuff. Yeah, there's no compromises when it comes to functional design. So all these interior spaces, I kind of just fit it in wherever I was able to find space rather than building a superstructure that kind of conflicts with the shape and silhouette of the craft. I do like to put a turret here instead of a bridge. Like there's no for high tech airship or spaceship analog like this. There's no point having an exterior bridge. All right, let's see how we do against Empyrean. So we have quite a few different types of munitions engaging. And then I think because the target is slow, the sight guns are deployed to shoot at them from any angle. The main lasers are shooting at missiles. And because we detected a large missile, we're dropping the shield blocks so that we can engage in warp. Yeah, the particle cannon is able to shoot through around all of that um, and knock out the enemy, kind of just pierce through all of that. So the Imperium doesn't use wood spam, so these lasers are not doing a whole lot. But if we're just shooting at alloy uh, is pretty decent. Or sorry, not alloy. If we're just shooting at metal, even metal with smoke, you can still do quite a bit compared to um, whatchamacallit, heavy armor and smoke. No, we shot down that nuke. You're just keeping those lasers on target. Poke. I feel like one of these side drones probably got hit by a nuke, but now it's been repaired and it's going forward again. Yeah, these lasers on the Moonlight Reverie, they're more like phasers from Star Trek. They're less offensive weapons and more utility weapons, but they certainly do their function. All right, my apologies. It seems like there's too much stuff going on right now, so now the game is in degraded mode. Um, I think these lasers are quite good at dealing with just aim point spoofing as well. That's one more thing that they can deal with. And once the armor is through, right, they can, like even with smoke, they can be pretty good at dealing with these internal components. As long as the APS cracks the armor. So what the ship does is when the enemy is low on health, it automatically closes in range to get a more accurate fire and just be able to land more of the damage on the target. And I see AI falling out. There you go. Uh, it's not the most heavy firepower unit, but it does have a very all-around suite of complex functions that make it very reliable at these capital ship engagements. Um, just kind of a Swiss Army knife type of flagship that does a little bit of everything, and then all of its different toolboxes also come together to do that one thing decently well. At least I hope that's what it does. Haven't really had any disappointments with this craft, but just with how expensive it is, I also just deployed it very carefully. Um, yeah. So the next video, I'll be showcasing three very different craft that are extremely gimmicky and not as well rounded as this. Kind of slightly different approach, and yeah, hopefully see you guys then. And if you like, please like and subscribe so you don't miss out on more of my fun builds. Thank you.